1997, the PlayStation was in full stride, with racing games becoming one of its strongest genres. Gran Turismo was about to redefine realism, Ridge Racer was still dominating arcades, and suddenly, Porsche entered the scene, not through a huge simulation, but with a quirky, stylish, and strangely underrated exclusive, Porsche Challenge. This was Sony Computer Entertainment Europe's big attempt to mix sleek realism with accessibility, wrapped around the prestige of one of the world's most iconic car brands. But how well did it pull it off? Let's dive into the story, the gameplay, and the tech that made this racer stand out in the crowded PS1 library. Porsche Challenge was developed by SCEE's London studio, the same branch that would later become famous for the Getaway and SingStar. At the time, Sony was keen to broaden its portfolio of racing titles, and this game gave them something different, a fully licensed racer built around the then-new Porsche Boxster. That's right, this wasn't just a general Porsche title, it was laser-focused on showcasing the Boxster, which had launched in Europe in 1996 and was Porsche's attempt to reach a younger, more affordable sports car market. Porsche Challenge was, in some ways, an interactive advertisement, but Sony wanted it to feel more like a proper arcade racer than a commercial. It was released in Europe in 1997 and later in North America, though it never quite caught mainstream fire. Still, its sharp visuals, stylish presentation, and unusual character-based spin made it a memorable entry in the PlayStation racing catalog. At its core, Porsche Challenge is a straightforward racing game. 4 main tracks, each with forward and reverse variations, and a single car, the Boxster. The twist, you choose from 4 different drivers, each with their own personality and even a little storyline. This gave the game a surprisingly character-driven feel, something you didn't often see in racing titles of the time. Each driver had a distinct driving style, from aggressive handling to smoother cornering, which subtly altered how the car responded. It wasn't as deep as a sim, but it gave the illusion of variety in a game where technically, you only had one car. The races themselves were fast, slick, and arcade-like, but with a certain weight to the handling that set it apart from Ridge Racer's pure drift mechanics. If anything, Porsche Challenge sat somewhere between arcade and sim, not as unforgiving as TOCA Touring Car Championship, but not as floaty as Cruisin' USA. Now let's talk about the tech, because this is where Porsche Challenge quietly impressed. The graphics engine was custom-built by SCEE and pushed the PlayStation hard for its time. The Porsche Boxster was rendered with surprising detail, smooth curves, reflective surfaces, and a level of fidelity that stood out in '97. Keep in mind, the PS1 wasn't great at handling curves. Most cars of the era looked jagged and boxy, but here, the Boxster's rounded bodywork came across beautifully. Track design was also a highlight. From alpine roads to coastal highways, the environments felt larger and more alive than the flat, looping circuits many races offered at the time. The game made use of distance fog and clever texture work to give an illusion of depth, classic PS1 tricks that worked surprisingly well. Audio was another strong point. The Boxster's engine note wasn't just generic. Sony worked with Porsche to sample a more authentic sound, giving the car a throaty, recognizable tone. Combined with a soundtrack that leaned heavily into late 90s electronic beats, the game had a distinct vibe, sleek, modern, and unmistakably European. To really appreciate Porsche Challenge, you have to look at what else was on the market. In 1997, arcade-style races were everywhere. Ridge Racer Type 4, Sega Rally, and Need for Speed 2 were all competing for attention. Compared to Ridge Racer, Porsche Challenge felt heavier, more grounded. Compared to Sega Rally, it wasn't as intense or demanding, but it had better presentation. And when you stacked it against Gran Turismo, which would release just months later, it suddenly felt limited. One car, 4 tracks, and relatively shallow depth couldn't compete with Polyphony's genre-defining masterpiece. But Porsche Challenge wasn't trying to be Gran Turismo. Instead, it carved out a stylish niche as a showcase game. It was about giving players a taste of the Boxster lifestyle, with a little personality and flair on the side. Reception at the time was mixed. Critics praised the visuals and slick presentation, but many pointed out the lack of content. With only one car and a handful of tracks, replayability was limited, especially in the shadow of bigger, deeper races. Still, it found a fanbase among PS1 owners who appreciated its simplicity and smooth driving model. And interestingly, it set the stage for Sony's later ventures into more ambitious racing titles, eventually leading to Gran Turismo becoming the flagship. Today, Porsche Challenge is remembered as a curiosity, not a must-play classic, but a stylish slice of mid-90s PlayStation history. It's also one of the rare PS1 games with an official Porsche license, which makes it a collector's piece for racing fans. Looking back, Porsche Challenge might not have redefined the racing genre, but it captured a very specific moment in time. A time when car manufacturers were starting to see video games as serious marketing tools, when developers were experimenting with personality-driven races, and when the PlayStation was cementing itself as the home of stylish, accessible gaming experiences. Was it limited? Absolutely. But was it cool? Definitely. So next time you think about iconic PS1 races, spare a thought for Porsche Challenge, the game that gave the Porsche Boxster its virtual debut, and proved that sometimes, less is more. As long as it's done in style. What about you? Did you ever play Porsche Challenge, or was it overshadowed by bigger titles like Gran Turismo and Ridge Racer for you? Drop your memories in the comments, and let's see how many of you remember this sleek little gem from 1997.